Irvin staring into the darkness that engulfed the night. It was late, and the desolate road stretched out ahead of him, disappearing into the black void. He had always enjoyed the solitude of the night drive, finding comfort in the rhythmic hum of the engine and the peacefulness of the empty roads. Tonight, however, there was an unexplainable unease in the air. The hairs on the back of Irvin's neck stood on end, and a chill ran down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was. He shrugged off the unease, chalking it up to fatigue after a long day at work, and decided to continue his journey. As he drove deeper into the night, the road became narrower and the surrounding trees closed in, casting eerie shadows that danced in the moonlight. The only sound was the faint rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. Irvin's grip on the steering wheel tightened as he tried to push away the growing sense of foreboding. Just when he thought he was being paranoid, a flicker of movement caught his attention in the rearview mirror. He glanced back, his heart pounding in his chest, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. "Just my imagination," he muttered to himself, trying to reassure his racing mind. But as he returned his gaze to the road ahead, he noticed a figure standing in the distance. A silhouette emerged from the darkness, motionless and ominous. Irvin squinted, trying to make out any details, but the figure remained obscured. Uneasiness washed over him, and he instinctively slowed down his car. The figure seemed to grow larger with each passing second, drawing nearer to the road. Irvin's heart raced as he tried to rationalize what he was seeing. Was it a hitchhiker? A stranded motorist in need of assistance? Against his better judgment, Irvin decided to stop and offer help. He pulled over to the side of the road, his headlights casting an eerie glow on the figure. As he stepped out of the car, the chilling silence of the night enveloped him. "Hello," he called out tentatively. "Do you need any help?" The figure remained motionless, its face obscured by darkness. Irvin took a few cautious steps forward, his pulse pounding in his ears. The figure slowly turned, revealing a face that sent shivers down Irvin's spine. The face belonged to a woman, pale and ghostly. Her eyes were vacant, devoid of any emotion, and her lips were drawn into a thin, emotionless line. Irvin felt a cold sweat forming on his brow as he stared into her lifeless gaze. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. There was no response, only a chilling silence that hung in the air. Irvin's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Was she injured? Was she lost? Before he could gather his thoughts, the woman suddenly lunged toward him, her movement swift and unexpected. Irvin stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest. The woman's hands reached out, her icy fingers brushing against his skin. Panic surged through Irvin's veins as he struggled to free himself from her grasp. With a burst of strength, he managed to break free and retreated toward his car, the woman's haunting gaze fixed upon him. He fumbled for his car keys, his hands trembling uncontrollably. As he finally managed to unlock the door, he jumped inside, slamming it shut behind him. Breathing heavily, Irvin locked the car doors and glanced out the window. The woman stood by the roadside, her face expressionless, her eyes still fixed on him. The realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. There was something truly sinister about her. Frantically, he turned the key in the ignition, praying that the car would start. The engine roared to life, and he wasted no time in putting the car into gear. The tires screeched as he sped away, leaving the woman behind, but the image of her vacant stare remained etched in his mind. As he drove, Irvin couldn't shake the feeling that he had narrowly escaped a dreadful fate. Questions flooded his mind. Who was that woman? What did she want? And more importantly, was he still in danger? Determined to find answers, Irvin decided to delve into the mystery. He began researching local news archives and stumbled upon a chilling discovery. It turned out that the road he had been driving on was notorious for a series of unsolved disappearances. People had reported encountering a woman who matched the description of the one he had encountered, only to vanish without a trace. Irvin's heart sank as he realized the gravity of the situation. He had narrowly escaped becoming another statistic, a victim of whatever dark force haunted that desolate road. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, and he knew he had to uncover the truth. Little did he know, his pursuit of the truth would lead him down a path filled with danger, deception, and unimaginable horrors. Irvin was about to embark on a journey that would push him to the brink of his sanity as he uncovered the dark secrets hidden within the night drive. Armed with newfound knowledge and an unyielding determination, Irvin delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding the haunted road. He interviewed locals, scoured old police reports, and even sought out those who claimed to have encountered the eerie woman. Each encounter painted a picture of fear and desperation. The victims spoke of a paralyzing chill that gripped them as they crossed paths with the woman, and those who managed to escape her clutches were haunted by nightmares that seemed all too real. Irvin couldn't ignore the overwhelming evidence that something supernatural was at play. Driven by a mix of curiosity and a desire to protect others from a similar fate, Irvin decided to spend another night on the road, hoping to confront the ghostly woman once more. Armed with a camera and a voice recorder, he prepared himself for the encounter. As the night settled in and darkness blanketed the road, Irvin parked his car at a strategic location and waited. The hours ticked by slowly, each passing minute amplifying his anticipation and unease. The night seemed to stretch on forever, but just as he began to doubt his decision, he saw a flicker of movement in the distance. His heart skipped a beat as the woman emerged from the shadows, her ghostly figure illuminated by the moonlight. This time, however, Irvin was determined to capture evidence of her existence. He pressed record on his voice recorder and aimed his camera at her. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice steady but laced with apprehension. The woman turned to face him, her pale eyes piercing through the darkness. She extended a hand toward him, her fingers beckoning him closer. Irvin hesitated, torn between his desire to understand and the inherent danger that radiated from her presence. Summoning his courage, he cautiously approached, his camera capturing every detail. The woman remained silent, her gaze unyielding. Irvin's heart raced as he took a step closer, his instincts warning him of an impending threat. Suddenly, a bone-chilling gust of wind swept through the air, extinguishing the nearby streetlights. Irvin's camera flickered, and the recording abruptly cut off. Panic gripped him as darkness engulfed him, leaving him disoriented and vulnerable. In the midst of the darkness, a low, haunting whisper echoed through the air. Irvin strained to hear the words, his senses heightened with fear. The whispers grew louder, filling his ears and echoing in his mind, but the words remained incomprehensible. Terrified, Irvin stumbled backward, desperately fumbling for his car keys. He could feel an otherworldly presence closing in around him, threatening to consume him. With trembling hands, he finally found the keys and sprinted towards his car, desperate to escape the clutches of the supernatural force. As he peeled away from the haunted road, Irvin glanced in his rearview mirror. The woman stood at the edge of the road, her eyes fixed on him, a mix of sadness and malevolence in her gaze. It was a chilling reminder that some secrets are better left buried. Irvin vowed to share his findings with the world, to warn others of the dangers lurking on that desolate road. But deep down, he knew that his encounter with the ghostly woman had changed him forever. The scars of that night drive would forever be etched in his mind, a haunting reminder of the inexplicable and the darkness that dwells in the depths of the night. Edison sat behind the wheel of his car, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The night was dark and eerie, the moon barely visible behind the thick veil of clouds. He had been driving for hours, his mind consumed by thoughts and worries that seemed to grow with every passing mile. It had all started a week ago when Edison received a mysterious phone call late at night. The voice on the other end was distorted and whispered cryptic messages, speaking of secrets that Edison was unaware of. The caller knew things about him that no one else should know. At first, Edison dismissed it as a prank, but as the days went by, strange things began to happen. He would find his belongings rearranged in his apartment, and he started hearing faint whispers in the dead of the night. The fear was slowly consuming him, and he couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Desperate to find answers, Edison had spent countless hours researching, trying to uncover any clues that would lead him to the truth. The search had brought him to this desolate road, far from the familiarity of the city. He hoped that by following the instructions he had received, he would find the answers he sought. As he continued driving, the road ahead seemed never-ending. The only source of light came from his car's headlights, casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. Edison's heart raced as he tried to ignore the sinking feeling in his gut. He knew he was getting closer to something, but he couldn't shake off the fear that awaited him. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, standing in the middle of the road. Edison's heart skipped a beat as he slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a screeching halt just inches away from the figure. He peered through the windshield, his eyes widening in shock. It was a woman, her pale face illuminated by the car's headlights. Her eyes were wide and filled with terror, and her clothes were torn and dirty. Edison could see the desperation in her eyes as she looked at him, pleading for help. Without thinking, Edison flung open the car door and rushed towards her. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Please, you have to help me. They're after me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Edison's mind raced. Who were they? What had she gotten herself into? Despite the fear gnawing at him, he knew he couldn't leave her alone in the darkness. He gestured for her to get in the car, and without hesitation, she complied. As they sped away, the woman introduced herself as Sarah. She explained that she had been driving alone when her car broke down in the middle of nowhere. She had been running through the woods, trying to escape her pursuers when she stumbled upon the road where Edison had found her. Edison couldn't help but feel a deep sense of unease. Who were these pursuers, and why were they after Sarah? He glanced at her, noticing the terror etched on her face. He knew he had inadvertently entangled himself in something dangerous, something that would have consequences he couldn't yet fathom. Edison glanced at Sarah, her hands trembling in her lap. He knew he had to remain calm for both their sakes. He needed to find a safe place, somewhere they could hide and gather their thoughts. He decided to head towards a nearby town that he remembered passing through earlier, hoping they would find help there. The car sped down the dark road, the tension palpable inside the vehicle. Edison's mind raced with questions, but he knew he couldn't overwhelm Sarah further. Instead, he focused on the road ahead, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. As they approached the town, Edison noticed something odd. The streets were empty, the buildings shrouded in darkness. It was as if the entire town had been abandoned. He couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He parked the car in front of a small cafe, the only place that showed any sign of life. Edison and Sarah stepped out, the cool night air sending chills down their spines. They cautiously entered the cafe, their eyes darting around, searching for any signs of human presence. To their surprise, they found an elderly man sitting at a table, hunched over a cup of cold coffee. His eyes widened as he noticed Edison and Sarah, his expression a mix of relief and fear. You shouldn't have come here," the old man croaked, his voice hoarse. "This town, it's cursed." Edison and Sarah exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. They approached the old man, urging him to explain further. "It started months ago," the old man began, his voice filled with despair. "Strange things started happening. People began disappearing, one by one. Those who remained were gripped by fear, hiding in their homes, too scared to venture out. We don't know who or what is behind it, but we all live in constant dread." Edison's heart sank. It seemed that the town they had stumbled upon was gripped by an unknown terror, just like Sarah and himself. He knew they had to find a way to break free from this nightmare, to uncover the truth that lurked in the shadows. They spent hours talking to the old man, learning about the disappearances, the unexplained phenomena, and the rumors of a dark secret that lay hidden beneath the town. The more they heard, the more determined they became to find answers and put an end to the fear that plagued the residents. Armed with newfound knowledge, Edison and Sarah set out to investigate the town's mysteries. They explored abandoned buildings, followed hidden trails, and spoke to the few remaining residents who dared to share their stories. Every step brought them closer to the heart of the darkness that consumed the town. However, as they delved deeper, their lives became increasingly endangered. They discovered that those responsible for the disappearances were part of a powerful and influential group who operated in the shadows, manipulating the lives of the townspeople for their own twisted purposes. Edison and Sarah became marked targets, hunted by these ruthless individuals who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. The danger grew with each passing moment, forcing them to rely on their wits and resilience to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. Edison and Sarah found themselves in a race against time, desperately trying to uncover the truth and expose the dark forces that plagued the town. They followed a trail of clues that led them to a hidden underground facility located on the outskirts of town, a place where unspeakable experiments had taken place. As they cautiously entered the facility, the stench of decay and the flickering lights filled the air. The sight that greeted them was horrifying. Rows of cells lined the dimly lit corridors, each containing tortured souls who had fallen victim to the sinister experiments. The realization of the atrocities committed in this place sent shivers down their spines. Determined to bring justice to the victims and put an end to the reign of terror, Edison and Sarah made their way through the facility, evading guards and overcoming various obstacles. They discovered documents and recordings that exposed the true nature of the experiments, an attempt to manipulate and control human behavior for nefarious purposes. Their search led them to a hidden chamber deep within the facility. It was there they found the mastermind behind the horrors, a wealthy and influential figure known as Dr. Sebastian Hargrove. Driven by power and madness, he had orchestrated the entire operation, using the town as his personal laboratory. As Edison and Sarah confronted Dr. Hargrove, a fierce struggle ensued. They fought for their lives, the weight of their mission, and the lives lost weighing heavily on their shoulders. The room echoed with the sounds of their struggle, and in a final act of desperation, Edison managed to overpower Dr. Hargrove, immobilizing him. With the authorities alerted and the truth exposed, the dark grip over the town was finally broken. Edison and Sarah became heroes, revered by the townspeople who had lived in fear for far too long. The facility was shut down, and those responsible for the atrocities were brought to justice. In the aftermath, Edison and Sarah stood together, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. They had overcome unimaginable horrors and emerged as beacons of hope in a once dreadful place. The bond forged through their shared journey grew stronger, and they found solace and strength in each other's presence. Together, Edison and Sarah vowed to continue their fight against injustice and darkness. They became advocates for the victims, tirelessly working to rebuild the shattered lives and bring healing to the town that had endured so much pain. And so, their night drive, born out of fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a testament of resilience and the triumph of the human spirit. Edison and Sarah's story would be whispered for years to come, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. Kenny was driving the car as usual, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. It was a moonless night, and the darkness seemed to swallow everything around him. He took a deep breath and tried to calm his racing heart. The night drive was never his favorite, especially when it involved driving through the secluded roads that led to his small, quiet hometown. The past few weeks had been tense for Kenny and his family. Their little boy, Tommy, had gone missing, and despite the efforts of the local police, there were no leads to follow. Kenny couldn't bear the thought of staying idle while his son was out there somewhere, scared and alone. So every night, he set out on a drive, scouring every inch of the surrounding area, hoping to find some clue that would lead him to Tommy. As Kenny navigated the winding roads, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Shadows danced in his peripheral vision, and the rustling of leaves in the wind seemed to whisper eerie secrets. It was as if the night itself was conspiring against him. Still, he pressed on, determined to find his son. Tonight, however, something felt different. Kenny noticed a faint light in the distance, flickering like a distant star. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to investigate. He took a sharp turn onto an unmarked road, leading him deeper into the darkness. As he followed the flickering light, it grew stronger, illuminating an old, dilapidated house. The windows were boarded up, and the paint on the walls had long faded away. Kenny's heart raced as he parked his car and cautiously approached the eerie structure. It seemed abandoned, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something inside, something he needed to discover. With trembling hands, Kenny pushed open the creaking front door. The air was musty and filled with an oppressive silence. He cautiously stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath his weight. The flickering light led him further into the house until he reached a small, dimly lit room. There, huddled in a corner, was Tommy. His face was stained with tears, and his small body trembled with fear. Kenny's heart both broke and soared with relief as he rushed to embrace his son. "Tommy, my boy, I found you," Kenny cried, his voice choked with emotion. "What happened? How did you end up here?" Tommy clung to his father, sobbing softly. Through his tears, he managed to utter two haunting words: "The man." Kenny's heart sank as he realized that Tommy's kidnapper was still at large. But in that moment, his fear turned into unwavering determination. He would bring the man to justice and ensure that no other child would suffer the same fate. As they left the abandoned house and returned to their car, the flickering light in the distance revealed itself to be a distant street lamp. Kenny couldn't help but wonder if it was a sign, guiding him to Tommy, to the truth. Little did he know that the night drive was just the beginning of a long and treacherous journey that would test his resolve, unravel dark secrets, and bring him face to face with the sinister forces that had taken his son. Kenny sat in the car, his knuckles white as he clenched the steering wheel. With Tommy safely by his side, he knew he had to uncover the truth behind his son's abduction. The mysterious man who had taken Tommy still lingered in the shadows, and Kenny was determined to bring him to justice. Days turned into weeks as Kenny tirelessly investigated every lead, leaving no stone unturned. He visited the police station daily, poring over case files and speaking with witnesses. The more he dug, the more he realized that his small hometown held dark secrets, secrets that seemed to be linked to Tommy's disappearance. Late one evening, as Kenny sifted through old newspaper clippings, he stumbled upon a story from decades ago. It detailed the sudden disappearance of another child, a girl named Sarah. The circumstances were eerily similar to Tommy's case, right down to the deserted house where she was found. Kenny's heart sank as he realized he was dealing with a pattern of abductions. Driven by a newfound determination, Kenny reached out to the family of Sarah, hoping they might hold vital information. Sarah's parents, still grieving after all these years, reluctantly agreed to meet with him. They shared their harrowing experience, describing the sleepless nights, the endless search, and the lack of closure. During their conversation, a chilling detail emerged. Both Tommy and Sarah had been playing near the old town library before their disappearances. Kenny's mind raced, connecting the dots. The library was rumored to hold ancient records of the town's history, including stories of lost children, whispers of dark rituals, and unsolved mysteries. Armed with this information, Kenny ventured to the library. He combed through dusty archives, searching for any clues that would lead him to the truth. It was there that he stumbled upon a forgotten journal, its pages yellowed with age. The journal belonged to a librarian from decades ago, who had documented strange occurrences in the town. According to the journal, a secret society known as the Night Seekers had existed in the town for centuries. They were said to be obsessed with dark rituals and believed that sacrificing innocent children would grant them eternal power. The librarian had dedicated her life to uncovering their secrets, but her efforts had ultimately led to her own disappearance. With trembling hands, Kenny realized that he had stumbled upon the truth, a truth that went far beyond a simple kidnapping. The Night Seekers were responsible for the abductions, and they had infiltrated every corner of the town, hiding in plain sight. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Kenny knew he had to act quickly. He gathered evidence, documenting the connections between the disappearances, the abandoned house, and the nightmarish cult. With the weight of the truth on his shoulders, he approached the police once more, providing them with the evidence that would expose the Night Seekers. In a coordinated effort, the police stormed the cult's hidden lair, rescuing numerous abducted children and arresting those responsible. The town breathed a collective sigh of relief as the horrors of the Night Seekers were brought to light. But for Kenny, closure came with a bittersweet taste. The scars of his journey would forever be etched into his soul. As time passed, Kenny and Tommy slowly began to heal, finding solace in each other's presence. The town, once shrouded in darkness, started to rebuild and recover from the sinister grip of the cult. Kenny's unwavering determination and courage had brought justice not only to his son, but to all the lost children who had suffered at the hands of the Night Seekers. In the end, it was not just a night drive that saved Tommy, but Kenny's love, resilience, and unyielding spirit. Together, they had overcome the darkest of nights, proving that even in the face of unimaginable horror, the light of truth and love could prevail.